Hi everyone, and welcome once again to Kipao Media. I'm your host, Douglas Ibole. We've actually seen the happenings that have gone on in Tanzania in the couple of days and weeks that have passed. They had an election, uh, which many viewed as a sham election. The opposition party was not allowed to campaign. The opposition leaders were locked in prison. And it's more like the president actually ran against herself. Um, we have a problem um, in African leadership that we really need to tackle as quickly as possible as the future leaders of this country. And the problem of authoritarianism is something that is really a big problem with our fathers and our forefathers. Um, this whole idea of clinging into power and not wanting any alternative and not wanting to come out of power, wanting to die in office, is something that really has to come to a change. And I'll let you watch this video. That really briefly talks about how authoritarianism starts and how it grows and how it actually leads to the destruction of a country. Just check this clip out and I'll be back. Hi. Oh yeah, we're back again. After watching that clip, you heard all the steps that are taken, or all the steps that come before authoritarianism comes in and destroys a country. And I believe that this is something that is a real problem in Africa. African leadership has always had a problem with authoritarianism, dictatorship, and clinging on to power. And I believe all this is because of lack of plan. Lack of a plan, lack of a vision, lack of a ideology that actually can propel the country forward. So why do they hang on to power? Because they feel like they have not delivered what they had delivered or what they intended to deliver within that period of time. What makes them cling to power? Because they believe that when they come out of power, they will miss out on future contracts that are about to happen, future deals that are about to take place, new discoveries of maybe mining, new discoveries of different potentials in the country that can generate wealth. They feel that they miss out on that. Why are they clinging on to their seats? The whole idea of making sure that their enemies, their so-called enemies, do not get into power and prosecute them. And why? Because they've been corrupt, they've mismanaged the country, they've oppressed people, and sometimes even they've taken people's lives. So they cling on to power as a form of security. Why do they cling on to power? They cling on to power so that they can be able to actually benefit those people who actually do the dirty work for them. Why do they cling on to power? They cling on to power for the sake of self aggrandize. How is that word? Self grandize. Ooh, wow. They cling on to power just for the sake of being able to feel like they are powerful and they can influence anything, and they don't want to lose that position. Why do they cling on to power? They cling on to power so that they can be able to pass on these positions to their children, so that the children can be able to take up after them in the same positions of presidency and being able to rule the country. Why do they cling on to power? They cling on to power because they know no other way of survival apart from what they've been used to in their positions as presidents of this country, and they cannot see themselves going back and living a normal life. Why do they cling on to power? They cling on to power because they abuse the country in terms of foreign aid and foreign loans that they keep on taking left, right, and center, that is stored in all these foreign bank accounts and offshore accounts, that is the money that belongs to the country. And they believe that if they come out of power, they will be prosecuted because of this. So these are the things that we're facing in Africa. And the African Union is an organization that really needs to be disbanded, and a new union needs to be put forward that can actually fight for the people of Africa in terms of proper leadership and visionary leadership. So the problem here is two different generations that come up with different ideologies and ways of approaching life. And we have the older generation, we have the Gen Z generation. The Gen Z are looking at life in a different way. They do not subscribe to this tribal and cronyism and nepotism. They subscribe to meritocracy. They subscribe to a system that functions, a system that has systems that are balanced and systems that have checks and balances, that can be able to actually have strong systems that can actually be able to govern a country and lead a country forward. So we are caught between this moment, and that's why you're having all these problems happening at this time. There's so much pushback by the older generation, and there's pushback by the younger generation to actually bring change, and that's why we're having this conflict. But I believe that after this conflict and after this struggle settles down, I believe that's when we're going to have a new rebirth of African leadership, which is about to happen, because the Gen Zs are going to take a different approach in terms of leadership. We've seen most of the countries since independence, majority of African countries got independence in the late 50s and early 60s and early 70s. There has not been any change in terms of the way the countries are governed, and it's always been the same old game, and the African Union with the leadership supporting each other in their terrible games that they play and their dictatorship games that they play, protecting and encouraging each other to continue doing the wrong things and not providing what they need for their citizens. So this is a very trying era for Africa right now, but I believe that the young generation will come out victor if they stick to their guns, if they're focused, if they're well organized, and if they have a vision that can be clearly if they have a vision that can be clearly sort of like expressed to the public through their works and deeds and character, then I believe that they will be elected, and we can have a country that has an ideology, has a vision, and has a way of bringing in checks and balances to make sure that the vision is accomplished and the development that we need is done. This is Kipao Media, and I'm your host, Douglas Ibole. Please comment on the comment section. Let me know what you think about this topic. Let me know what I missed. Let me know what I need to talk about next time. I believe that this topic is quite huge, and it might require a lot of hours in terms of discussion. In future, I hope I can be able to have a panel to come in and be able to discuss some of these issues and bring in their expertise, because I do not know everything, and I'm always open to new ideas and also open to people who can actually show us how different things work. I do believe that the older generation has value as much as the new generation has value, but we need only the people in the older generation that have a vision and have the will to actually lead and actually show the way forward and help the young ones be able to understand governance and be able to understand how to move and how to make things work. I believe that the older generation is valuable, but we still have a section of the older generation that doesn't want to change and doesn't want any kind of development, and they want to stay business as usual. But we are going to change that. Thank you very much. This is Douglas Ibole from Kipao Media. Till we see you again. Bye-bye.
So this happens in every nation that has become an autocracy, having been a democracy. So whether we're talking about Brazil with Bolsonaro, or India, or Putin and Russia, the Philippines with Duterte. So start with winning an election. Mm-hmm. Usually the last one you're going to get to have for real. Number two, you have an expansion of executive power. The president decides he wants more than he's supposed to have. Number three, you start to make the Congress complicit, so you weaken them and you neutralize or neuter the judiciary. Like, oh, I don't know, the Supreme Court is giving you unfettered power and saying we don't have the ability to stop things. Then you move on to firing all of the people who know how to make government work. So you gut the civil service. And you do that because you want to break democracy so people forget the stuff that used to get done, so you can't get your Social Security check. So the CDC doesn't know what diseases are anymore. Then you put in place these loyalists, these people who are only responsive to you, so they go after your enemies. You put them in charge of the Department of Justice, the Department of Defense, so they can signal to their friends and tell them all about the evil plans that you have. Then you make certain that you break how we communicate. So you criticize the media and you create your own echo chamber of propaganda. You call it truth even though you know you're lying. Then you go to the next step, and I call that step 7. Because at step 7, you have to blame someone. You have to blame people for the broken government, for the broken promises. So you go after the vulnerable, the dispossessed, you go after any community that doesn't look like what you think power should be. While you're doing that, you make certain that you, in step 8, you eliminate anybody who can help them. So you sue law firms that do pro bono cases. You go after philanthropies and accuse them of giving money to the wrong people. You go after colleges and universities that can teach people possibly what else they should know. You get to step 9 and you start to encourage and incentivize private violence. You kidnap people off of the streets and pretend that's normal, because that's how you quiet dissent, because you make everyone afraid that if they don't do what you want, they might be next. And once you've done those 9 steps, step 10 is easy. That's when you decide there won't be new elections, because everyone's either afraid, poor, broken, or complicit.
What is it that they can do to help avoid this and make a change in this?
We can fight back. We can remember that we do have power. They don't want dissent, so protest. They want us to forget that before we had power, we had each other. So when they break democracy, when they make sure you're checking on your neighbors, make sure we're using mutual aid, but also tell the truth. Do not let the propaganda win. Too often they tell a lie. They will tell a lie so often it sounds like the truth. We say the truth one time, and when people don't applaud, we stop talking. We've got to keep telling the truth, not only to push back against them, but to remind us that we are entitled to the truth. We have to believe that freedom of assembly means it's more than just going to protest. It's the ability to be friends with people who aren't like you. And we have to stop believing that we are in this alone. The most effective thing they do is isolate us. They convince us that you and I don't have any common cause, and we certainly don't have common cause with someone who has a different history than we do. When we hold to our truth, when we actually believe in ourselves and our people, when we believe in democracy as something that must deliver, that's when we start to fight back, and that's when they lose, because they win when we are too numb or too afraid to act. If you go back to step 7, you go after those communities that are the most likely to push back against you.
Yes.
Black women, immigrants, the LGBTQ plus community. The fact that transgender children are being blamed for the demise of society is intentional. The fact that we forget that if you are truly a Christian, the Bible tells us to take care of the poor and the needy and the stranger, not to round them up and kidnap them.
Right.
And so as a woman of color, as a Black woman in particular, I have the affirmative responsibility to speak up on behalf of everyone else, because they're coming for me first and they're coming for me next. Our responsibility then is to use every tool at our disposal, including politics. But politics isn't just about who gets elected. It's what we do the next day. It's when we remind people of what government should be doing.